Hey guys, Hone Ty here, your real estate guy, helping you escape your 9 to 5. Today we have a fantastic guest. The guest I have for you guys today has one of the #1 podcasts listened to. It has over 3 million downloads. It is listened to, get this, in over 180 countries. I couldn't even name 180 countries, and yet this podcast is listened to people all over the world. Some of his guests on his podcast include our favorite, Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. We also have Grant Cardone, for those who know Grant, Patrick Bet-David of Valuetainment. We even have Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. You have Jim Rogers, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. He's, again, one of the best podcasts to listen to. The person I have today, he's been in the real estate business for 20 years, has been helping people protect their wealth and increase their wealth. And he's just an all-around amazing person and someone that I am fortunate enough to call a friend. So please welcome Mr. MC Laubscher. MC, welcome to the Hone Zone. How's it going?
Loving it. Thank you for having me in the Hone Zone. I'm pretty excited about that. I've been looking forward to our chat, and you're putting out such amazing content right now during this time for everyone. So super excited. And plus, I always enjoy our conversations. We always have a lot of fun.
We do. We definitely do. So for those who don't know, I'm going to be joining MC's team and helping MC build a business that helps you protect and create more wealth. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to be within your sphere and helping you build the business. And I love what you're creating. You're doing so much for so many people because what you are working on is just how to help more people build more wealth. So I would love to start there if we could. What are you doing? What are you creating? What is your company for those who don't know you and what you're up to?
Yeah, so Cashflow, and everybody knows Cashflow Ninja. So Cashflow Ninja started 4 years ago. It's kind of funny that I just got the notification sometimes that Facebook reminds you of these things. But 4 years ago we launched, and it was a podcast, but it's now grown into a full-fledged online education company. And we're trying to reach as many people globally as we can. As you mentioned, we've been listened to and downloaded into over 180 countries, which is just crazy.
That's banana. Yeah.
Think about it. In 4 years. So we're trying to reach as many people, especially during this time, and trying to educate and share and get amazing guests on that just open up their vault of secrets and share that with everyone. And then I have a firm called Producers Wealth. And Producers Wealth helps a lot of investors and business owners in the United States to create, protect, recapture, and multiply cash flow. And we do that through different strategies. The main primary driver is the infinite banking concept strategy, which we help business owners and investors implement and execute, and then help them to coach of actually how to follow through with that strategy. And we do business in over 50 states. That I started about 5 years ago. So it's been an amazing 5 and 4 years. And we're very passionate. I'm very passionate. I love the people that I'm working with. That's also very passionate to help a lot of other people, because I think that this is one of the things that a lot of people are going to need. So I think a lot of people are going to need different alternatives to what they've been fed and what other people have been shared, to them. So we're very, very excited, and I'm very, very purpose driven and trying to reach and help as many people as I can.
Right. And you get to deal with a lot of really wealthy people. And would you agree that like wealthy people just have a different way of thinking? It's just like their whole life is completely different. The things that wealthy people teach their kids, completely different. Like all of that, it's just a completely different mindset than what most people understand, because I think we're always taught in school to just go get a job and make money that way, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that that's not necessarily what the wealthy people teach their kids.
Right.
And you firsthand get to interact with a lot of really wealthy people, like just some of the people that I mentioned that you've already interviewed, like Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone and all those guys. They think very differently.
Yep.
And they get to influence you. What have you taken away from those conversations and just being around people like that? What have you really absorbed from those people?
Yeah, it's the thing is that the main core, I would say, thing about extremely wealthy folks, and especially the families too, is that just as health management is their own priority, meaning they're in control of what they eat. They know they have to exercise, recover, hydrate, and sleep properly. And they've taken ownership of that and control over that because they're accountable for their own health. These extremely wealthy individuals and families do the same thing with money. It's funny when it comes to, health and relationships, we all know, hey, we're on deck, right? It's up to us. Like nobody else is going to work out for me and eat
right.
properly.
We can't outsource that.
Exactly. And if you want to build lasting, soulful, meaningful relationships, whether it's professionally, romantically, with family members, it's your responsibility. But when it comes to money and wealth management, which is a lot of work, it's somehow the majority of people have this mindset that it's, well, I'll just hand it over to someone else and they'll take care of it for me. And it's no, these folks are hands-on. Yes, they have a power team around them of advisors that help them, just as you would have a personal trainer and a nutritionist. And with relationships, maybe there's a therapist or someone that counsels you. The same thing is you still have these people helping you, but you're in control. You are accountable for your own money, and you're in control of that. So that's like the big thing is the control that they have. And then also they do, they do the complete opposite of what the majority of folks do. If you look at what's going on in family offices with the centimillionaire families and just really, really wealthy families, and you look at, wow, they do this and everybody else does that. It's not that they do something slightly different, right? So most people would say, well, they do this and maybe they tweak a little bit and do something different. No, they do the complete opposite. It's almost like that moment in Seinfeld, for any Seinfeld fans out there, where George has this, meltdown, which the lovable character, George Costanza, where he says to Jerry that, everything in his life has been the opposite of what he wanted it to be. So he figures that if he starts doing the opposite, what is his gut reaction, that'll get the opposite results, right? And then there's this whole scene in Seinfeld, and it's almost like it's very similar. So we know cash flow is one of the things that very wealthy investors invest for, and they follow a model where your money keeps moving and circulating through their own personal and business economy. They know it needs to keep moving, right? It is a currency that we're now dealing with, where the majority of folks still buy into this accumulation, scrimp, save, live below your means, basically just accumulate as much as you can and eventually try to turn that into income, right? So that's a big thing of it. I also would say that the wealthy families also know the power of being the bank, where the rest of the folks are simply operating within their own banking system. The third one I would say is the tax game, which is that was one of the biggest epiphanies that I had actually just sitting with friends that work in a family office, where they say, MC, the average person tries to save 10%. And we know that they don't do that too. If you look at the savings rates nationwide, but they take that, let's just say they save 10%. Let's be nice here. And that 10% then is what they try to multiply. That only that 10%, and they try to double that, and that's how they try to grow wealth, where the ultra wealthy in these families bring in advisors, A-level players. They look at the full pie, the full wealth pie. They look at 100% of their entire personal and business economy, and they figure out how to be more efficient in all areas. So the main driver, taxes. Think about, if you can reduce and limit the taxes, legally to 15 to 20%, how much does that move the needle in a family with a lot of zeros in their bank account, right? So it's a very big driver for them, is to focus on reducing taxes illegally. And by the way, if you do reduce it by 15 to 20%, and this is permanently over the course of time, what return do you have to get in the marketplace to beat that? It's,
Right.
so they play that. And the other thing is, it's also amazing what emphasis they have on risk management. They don't like to lose money. We can all throw, the quotes out there that we can. There's so many quotes. People love Warren Buffett's quote, rule number 1 of investing is don't lose any money. And rule number 2 is follow rule number 1, right?
Yeah. Don't forget rule number 1. Right.
Yeah, exactly. But they don't necessarily implement that in life. So they know that when they lose money, it wasn't really lost. It was just transferred. And now that money's gone. Now they're working for new money, right? Because the money just didn't evaporate. 30% out of the stock market just didn't disappear. It went to someone else. So it went from a lot of accounts into other accounts. So the money is still there. It was transferred. So it's very important to, for them to protect what they have. So within an overall strategy, there's a lot of defense. There's a lot of protective measures. And, it's not just picking up heavy baseball bats and trying to hit home runs, the sexy stuff.
It's very interesting that you brought that up, because I was just listening to an interview on the person who was training Michael Jordan. And most people would think that if you're trying to get an athlete to perform better, that you want to make them bigger, faster, stronger. But what the trainer actually did was he was nuts. He would count how many steps Michael Jordan took walking forward, walking backwards, going right, going left. And then he counted how many times he pivoted left versus pivoted right. And why he did that was because he created a whole training program so that he could not overwork one side to prevent injury. Because if the athlete is injured, then they're worthless, right? Because they're not playing the game. So we have to make sure that you stay in the game, prevent the injury. And the injury could be loss, like cash flow loss, wealth loss, whatever. So what you're talking about is that the really rich people focus on reducing the injury or the loss to their capital. You brought up family office, which is interesting because a lot of people don't even know what that is. So for those who don't know, a family office is someone who's like a family that's super rich. They're so rich that they hire asset managers and CPAs and attorneys and financial advisors and all of these people to work for their family. Is that correct?
So it's like a wealth management firm that the family has.
Right. It's like the family is as rich as like one of the biggest companies you can imagine. And you expect that a company has a whole team of people in their finance department. Well, this family hired that same team to just manage their assets, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. It's completely
think about
crazy.
it this way, right? So with those guys, so when you get to the level of where there's certain companies that does it for different families, and then there's single family offices, which all of these are based kind of on the Rockefeller family office model. But think about if there's an error between an accountant that doesn't speak to a lawyer, and there was a miscommunication, or they're not on the same page, there's a lot of zeros behind mistakes. So they have them all in-house. So there's no misunderstanding whatsoever what the objectives are and the vision of the family, and the principles of the family. So they are all on the same page and under one roof.
Right. But I think one takeaway that we can take from what you said was that like the rich, they have teams. They hire the best people to do what that person's supposed to do. What I find is a lot of like middle class people, they want to do everything themselves. They're their own bookkeeper, they're their own accountant, they're using TurboTax, they're doing all their legal work, however they're doing it, right? They're doing everything, and they are only as smart as themselves. Whereas the rich people hire people who are specialists in that particular field, and also they're the best in their field, right?
Yep.
So they hire the people who are smarter than them to do what they do.
Exactly. And they look at it as an investment. So for example, again, it's the complete opposite, right? Back to that central theme where most people would look at spending a lot of money on, let's just say, a CPA or a tax strategist. They would look and say, oh, that's too much money. it's just, we're rather going to go somewhere else or work with someone that doesn't cost that amount of money, where the wealthy and very wealthy folks would look at that and go, well, if that is his fee, let's talk about sticking with the example of the tax guy. What is my return on that investment? And by the way, if you have a very good tax guy on your team, there's going to be returns of multiples on that.
Right.
And just look at the return on that just by the taxes that they save, and then the return over years, because they're going to be doing that basically every single year, put you in the best situation to pay the least amount of taxes legally, right? So the return on investment is crazy. So they look at it as an investment. The average person looks at it as simply an expense, which they don't like to pay.
Yeah, I have a investor that he said that he spent $50,000 just for the consultation with the CPA. Just the consultation, not any of the tax stuff yet. The consultation was $50,000, which ended up saving him $1 million in taxes the very next year. So that multiple is huge. And what you were saying is that, and it's kind of to the same effect of that Michael Jordan strategy. The rich people focus on reducing taxes, whereas most other people just try to focus on making more money.
Yep. And
if you just reduce your taxes here because you were smarter with your strategies, then the result is probably better, because this is more sustainable over time. Just not paying these taxes legally, of course, but just not paying these taxes, because that can be done over and over and over predictably. Making more money may not be as predictable, but saving on taxes is 100% predictable. And that's that consistency of not paying things frivolously and not losing money. It's like, it follows that rule number one: don't lose money. Don't lose money in taxes.
And to your point, we deal with a lot of business owners across the country, and it's an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's what I love about entrepreneurs is they're always, well, we'll just make more money. And it's the aggressive offense. We'll just make more money. We'll solve this problem by making more money. And then what the most important thing then is what if we take a step back, like you just said, and pay less taxes and make more money? Now the game gets better. And the whole thing about taxes too, where it ties in, is it's simply a game, and this is how the ultra wealthy sees the game. There's a game of money, right? There's a rule book. It's called the IRS tax code, right? There's a rule book for it, and it's a game, and it's simply a game. And if you play the game poorly, you get punished. And as harsh as it is, if you think about it that way, because a lot of people would say, well, paying less in taxes, it means that you didn't play the rules of the game. And the rules of the game is if you actually provide a lot of value to the marketplace, your taxes get reduced legally. So the more value you create and your output is of value, the better you play the tax game and your taxes get reduced. So examples of that is, think about business owners and entrepreneurs. And the reason why, we're so passionate of helping and assisting them is because those are the folks that'll get people through this period that we're in, this time, and out on the back end, because entrepreneurs are going to come up with amazing products and services for the marketplace. And because they do that, they employ people. So there's a ripple effect of the value creation that they have, these ideas, right? And because of that, they get rewarded on the tax code. And then where they put that money becomes even more important, because if you keep the money in play to continue to provide market for the value for the marketplace, you continue to get better and better, I would say, treatment in the tax game. So an example is investing in real estate. So first they create some of the money that they're making, right? They provide jobs, and therefore they're rewarded in the game of money through the tax code. And then they deploy that eventually through different strategies into other businesses and real estate and maybe even energy projects, which is all needed in an economy, and they get rewarded more for that. So if you look at it that way, and that's how I look at it for myself. Every single time that I was sitting with a tax bill, I didn't point the finger at Uncle Sam and get angry. I was angry at this guy. I said,
that's good.
I was like, man, this is a report card, and it's not a good one.
Yeah.
Because it means I didn't really play the game that well. So what can I do then? Who do I need to bring on my team to help me play this game better? Because if I did play it a little bit better, I wouldn't have as poor of a report card, basically.
Right. And I love that you're taking responsibility, because if you blame somebody else, that means you don't have the power in the situation to change anything. But if you're like, okay, I messed up, right? And you're like, all right, I messed up. I didn't play the game right. So my job now is to play the game better. So how do the rich people play the game? They find people who know the rules, and they play the game that way. And it just makes so much sense, but a lot of people don't do it. And I understand why. It's because they don't even know it exists. They don't know that there's an option, right? So my friend Kyle here, he says, bringing the family office to the masses. I am all about that, right? So what is it that the rich people do? And can we help the people, the regular people, the masses? Can we help them apply some of these concepts and strategies to their own personal life? And so I want to talk about that. What are some of the things that you are personally doing to help people become wealthier and applying the strategies? Like, what specifically? I love details. I love getting into the weeds. So let's talk about that. Let's get into that. How are you helping the masses do what the rich are doing?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, and I love frameworks, right? So it's always, even from my playing sports days and business and so forth, I love utilizing frameworks because you can figure out what doesn't work and make adjustments to that within a certain framework. So the first thing that I would say is, and by the way, this is the biggest lesson I think that anyone should take away from this time period that we were in, was how unprepared most people and most businesses were for the inevitable. And when I say the inevitable, I didn't necessarily mean what is happening or what has happened, because, boy, that came out of left field. But what I'm saying is bad things happen to good people all the time, the time. That's just, it's life, right? It is. It's not rainbows and unicorns. So the first thing is, so most people and most businesses were very, very underprepared for what occurred and what happened. An inevitable event, which could have been another 2008 or 2001. The time period. You name the time period. Really, it's different, but the big picture was that there was an economic downturn, there was market crashes, there was a recession, and so forth. Right. So that was one of the biggest lessons. And the second thing is that this is at the core of this, is they had a lack of a strategy. So they had no strategy. So meaning a financial plan isn't necessarily a strategy. And what I mean by that is markets only do three things. They go up, they go down, and they go sideways. And what they do, we don't necessarily know, right? So if your plan, financial plan, or the strategy that you thought that you had really depends on just one thing, it going up, then you really didn't have one. Because you could do the math, it's not going to go up all the time. It's also not going to go down all the time. It's not going to go sideways all the time, but it's going to do one of those three things. So why not create a strategy which positions you for whatever comes in the marketplace or in the economy, right? So one of the things that I came up, because a lot of people would say, okay, MC, that's great, but how do you develop a strategy? How do you build it? So I came up with the strategy cornerstones. This is one of the things that I've been working on during the little bit of extra time that we have, is creating some new frameworks and really reverse engineering things that I've learned and going through my notes. And the strategy cornerstones is 5 C's that I put together. So in the first one that I'll mention, the first C is clarity. Clarity is huge. So there's also a difference between positivity and optimism, which we've seen right now, right? I can be as positive as I am and want to be, but if I'm sitting on a train track, my positivity is really not going to help me. That train is going straight over me. So clarity gets me off the track, and then I can be optimistic because I can now clearly see what is
Right.
going on and what I need to do. Clarity also ties into the vision that you have, right? The type of life that you want to build. Ultra wealthy folks know exactly, and especially family office families, they know they have a vision for themselves, for their life, but also a vision for the entire family into perpetuity, because they have a family constitution. They have a vision, they have clarity, they have a purpose for what they're trying to build and preserve, and they also have a way of transferring not only money, because that's the easy part when you have an A team around you, but also the intellectual, I would say, property through like a family constitution. And by the way, I always say you don't have to be the Rockefellers to do what the Rockefellers do. You can come up with a family constitution. You can sit down with your spouse and your children, and you guys can talk about your beliefs, what you and your principles, what you stand for, what you stand against, what you want to accomplish. How do you guys feel about health? How do you guys feel about relationships? How do you guys feel about money? What's your beliefs around that? What should it be? Should we talk about money in the house? Is that taboo? Should we have an open dialogue about it? All these things you can put in there, but it ties into being clear, having a vision, and you do an amazing job, Hone, of just teaching people of how to escape their 9 to 5. And it's all about lifestyle design too, right?
Yeah.
Because when you do, you don't necessarily want to build another prison for yourself, because that's what you try to run away with. And guess what? Everybody hates their boss, and now you're your own boss.
You're the boss. Yeah.
Right. So it's the vision that you want to have for your life. So clarity. And also what ties into clarity is you need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So think about that for a second. If you want to sit down and just ask yourself, what am I doing right now? And why am I doing it? What do I own? And why do I own it? And if you don't have an answer for that, you have to take a step back and think to yourself, I have to refigure this a little bit, because, we have conversations with a lot of folks, and sometimes they're doing certain things and they own certain things and they don't know why, because somebody told them to do that, but it wasn't even aligned with what they wanted to do, their vision for their life, right? One example is that somebody is investing in a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, but they want to become financially free through investing in real estate. So how do you, if you want to go there, but your money's there, there's something not right there. There's something not jiving. So, and I'm not saying anyone is better or worse. Again, I love real estate. I'm a real estate guy. There are some traders that I know that do really, they're not buy and hold guys in mutual funds. They trade in and out of markets. They're the guys that the money's being transferred to right now, because this has been the greatest time ever for them. But also, again, you need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. The second C is control. I talked a little bit about that. So you want to have control over yourself, your emotions. We all know about IQ, financial IQ, but also like the EQ, the emotional IQ. It's huge. The emotional intelligence is a big part. And when it comes to investing, it's very, very important to have control over your emotions, right? Control over your money. So control over your cash flow, control over your money, control over your taxes, when you pay taxes and how much you pay in taxes, because if you do it properly, you can have control with the right person on your team. Control over debt, right? Debt is one of those things that there's good debt and bad debt. Most of your listeners and viewers and audience know that, so I won't go into that too much. But you want to have control over that, and then control over your investments. Number 3, from a strategy, is collateralization, and I call it dollar maximization. And this is one of my favorite things, because the really wealthy actually use assets that they already own to acquire more assets, and they do it all the time. So most people, when they hear me talk about this, they would say, well, I don't quite understand it. And then I explain to business owners, well, if you have a business credit line or a business loan, it's secured by receivables of the business or assets that the business has, right? Equipment and so forth. And you get loans and lines of credit based on that. Well, there's someone in our network that had his business and utilize his business to buy the real estate that his business was operating from. So he didn't have to sell his business to buy the real estate. He leveraged his business and used his business to acquire the real estate. So using one asset to acquire another. HELOCs in real estate, everybody knows about that, right? So you'd have to sell the property. You can either refinance it or you can utilize a HELOC to access the equity to get it out and buy another property. And now you have two, and you use one asset to buy another asset. There's other strategies too. For example, asset-based lending, where people use a certain portfolio of stocks to get a loan secured by that to actually go and buy, let's just say, real estate with that or another asset. Commodity-backed finance is where you can actually use your gold and silver and secure a loan against that and leverage your gold.
You're going deep. I love it. You're going deep.
Yeah, so you could do that. Most people, and this is actually, it's funny, one of my coaches, this is like, we're talking now circa 2003, 2004. But what they did was, he shared with me, he said, MC, what we did was in the 70s, the interest rates were very high. So they actually they bought a CD from a bank. So they went into a bank, let's just say they had $100,000. And they would go into the bank and say, Mr. Banker, here's $100,000. Can I get a CD in your bank? And the banker would be like, absolutely, we'll get you a CD, of course. So they would get him a CD, and it would, let's just say it paid 10% at that point, right? Well, they would go then back to that same bank and say, Mr. Banker, I have a CD in your bank. Can we get a loan secured by that CD? And the banker said, well, I'm in the business of taking deposits, but I'm also in the business of making loans. So of course, so they would give him a loan for 90% backed by that, which ties into my next one, which is the infinite banking one, my favorite strategy out of this, which I've done and love doing because it has so many facets to it. But we actually, through the infinite banking concept, use overfunded life insurance like they do in these family offices, and how a lot of people utilize it. But they overfund these insurance products, and we do that. And then we borrow against the cash value. And life insurance is very much like real estate. And the first time I say that to folks, look at me and they go, what has this guy been smoking? But it actually, if you think about the difference between the two, is the asset. The underlying asset is the one is a human and the other one is a building. But just as you have a mortgage basically with real estate, and you pay that mortgage down for a certain period and own then the property free and clear, the same thing can be set up with an overfunded life insurance vehicle. You can pay it for a specific period in time, and then you own the policy free and clear. Now, as you're paying your mortgage payments, paying principal and interest, you're starting to build equity in the real estate, right? The same thing with the overfunded life insurance vehicle, where you make a certain amount of payments into it and you build up equity into that policy. And with real estate, where you can access the equity that you've built up through a HELOC, home equity line of credit, interest, through interest basically on it. The same thing, you can do that with a life insurance contract, where the equity that you've built up, the cash value, you can access that through a policy loan, which is essentially operates as a line of credit secured by the cash value in that contract. And then, I mean, there's phenomenal tax advantages in both of them. I don't have to dive into the real estate, but with the life insurance, there's tax-free growth in that policy. You access the money tax-free through policy loans. And then if you set it up properly, you can actually set up a quote-unquote private pension, which pays you a tax-free income stream when you are ready to take it, in additional to your other assets, 55, 60, 65, and 70. Then also the cash flow, which I love about both sides of that. The first time I paid all of my bills in my first rental property, and there was a little bit of money left. And I was like, this is amazing. How many times can I do a little bit of positive cash flow? The same thing is done in a life insurance contract with a mutual insurance carrier. They're much different than stock insurance companies. Mutual insurance companies have been around for almost 200 years. They are some of the United States and America's most secure financial institutions out there. They're not in the stock market. They manage the company on behalf of the shareholders, which is the policyholders. And when the company provides and operates at a profit, which they do, then the distributions of that profit is paid to the policyholders in the form of a dividend. So, which is also tax-free. So that's really, really nice. I mean, I could go on and on and on. We end up, well, here's one more before I pause there, is one more is there's two assets too, by the way, that banks love to lend money on, which is real estate and life insurance. They call it premium financing, which is a whole episode in itself, where banks will actually, and financial institutions will actually lend money for folks to fund insurance premiums. So they know that the collateral on both is of such a level that they would actually make loans on both, right? And then, yeah, there's a couple of others. You could get into mortgage notes, how they trade that. They do it with life insurance contracts. It's called life settlements. There's many, many other things in it, but they're very, very similar. So sometimes when you throw the insurance element on top of that, it confuses people, because the way that insurance is sold at retail level to the majority of the public is completely different than the way that insurance is structured and sold for the wealthier individuals and families.
So let's see what we can unpack from everything you just said for the last however long you just said it. There is a lot to unpack. So before we unpack too much, you said the person buys the CD, $100,000 CD from the bank, and then they go back to the same banker and say, hey, I would like to take a loan out against that CD, and then they get that 90%, right?
Yep.
Why would somebody do that? Why would somebody borrow against their CD versus just having the $100,000?
Yeah, so it all comes to having your money doing multiple things simultaneously. So in that example, the reason that you would do it is the CD would still grow uninterrupted. So, and now you accessed basically the money, but you didn't access it because it's a loan secured by that. And let's just say, even if you got that loan at 10%, but you invested in a real estate property at 18 or 20% at that stage, and pay down the loan with the cash flow. When the loan is paid down, you still have that CD that has gotten the 10% compounded return. The loan's paid off. You had the cash flow from the real estate. So let's just dissect a little bit there. So in the one bucket, uninterrupted compound growth, right? In the other bucket, you had a loan that was secured by that you leveraged to invest in real estate with all of the tax benefits and tax write-offs that's available with that, and the cash flow that was used to pay down the loan. So your money is just doing so many different things simultaneously. Now you wrap a life insurance contract around that. Now you've got an extra additional death benefit, right? Which is also passed tax-free on to the beneficiaries or the estate. There's many other riders that you can throw in there too, but just wrapping that around it, now there's some additional layers to it. So I would say the principle there is, even some of the other ways that I shared that you can implement collateralization is, the principle is still there, that $1 has to do many different things within your overall strategy. When it's just doing one thing, it's lazy, right? We all have heard the saying, the rich don't work for money. Robert Kiyosaki, they have their money working for them. Well, how about having that money work as hard as possible and doing many different things simultaneously and not just one thing?
I love that. There's so many things to it. So now, what I think some people who are brand new to this concept don't realize that when we talk about life insurance, because you brought that up, because that's actually, for those who aren't following along, that's the main vehicle that we use here in this conversation to allow you to not only build your wealth, but protect your wealth. So when people think life insurance, they think, oh, if I die, my family gets paid. And yes, there is a component of that. And that is how the poor and the middle class use life insurance. The rich, though, use it in a completely different way. They use life insurance for the life benefits.
Right.
The poor and middle class use life insurance for the death benefit. You guys see the difference? There's a huge difference. So with what MC's talking about, it's a whole life insurance policy. When you pay into your policy, some money goes to the death benefit, and then other money goes into the cash value part. That cash value part is building over time as you keep funding your policy, and it is reinvested into the market however the life insurance deems fit, and it's growing. And it's growing in a very safe and secure manner, so that over time it compounds and compounds and compounds. The nice thing about that is you can borrow against that money, like MC is saying, like instead of borrowing against a CD that you have collateralized, you're borrowing against the life insurance policy. And now I'm using the word against, which is very important. You're not taking the money away. You're saying that I have $100,000 in cash value. I'm borrowing against it, meaning if I don't pay it back, then take it from there, right? But the money that's in there is still growing at the full 100,000. If I borrow 75,000, it's not 25,000 that's growing. It's still the full 100,000 that's growing, but now I have access to say 75,000 or $90,000, however much I want to take from it to go do whatever else I need, the real estate or what have you.
Yep.
The thing, I've heard you say this before. It's like, oh, people think life insurance isn't sexy. I think it's the sexiest thing in the world because that money that's in your cash value is special. It's asset protected, and it isn't seen by the eyes of the people you don't want it to be seen. I'm going to put up a comment here. Carla is saying that for parents with college-age students, when they're trying to fill out their FAFSA, the money that's in the cash value here it does not have to be put on the FAFSA, so they can still qualify for that financial aid. Also, if you get sued personally, the creditors can't go after that money. It's sacred money. It's asset protection money. So again, rich people don't want to lose money. The poor and middle class are always on that offense and trying to make more and more and more and more money. But if you learn the rules, you get to play a different game.
Absolutely. I would also say that if this is your first time that you've ever heard sort of the strategy, and that's another difference between a lot of the ultra wealthy families and a lot of the average people, right, is they're very strategy focused, not just products. So the rich look at this stuff as tools, right? Everything is simply a tool. It's how do you utilize that tool within an overall strategy. Your viewers and your audience know that someone can be a real estate investor and buy a property, and that property can just not perform as well, right? And it could be a complete disaster, that specific property. And then another investor comes in and buys that property from that previous investor, the exact same property, and he turns that into a cash cow. Now, how is that possible? Yes, we could get into, when he bought the property and timing and market cycles, and we could go into all of the weeds. We could go into that, yes, but the general principle is that the strategy of the one person was just better than the other one, and that's why there was different outcomes for them. It's the same thing with all the vehicles, whether it's real estate, whether it's businesses, whether it's paper assets, whether it's stocks we talked about, or options, derivatives, or whether it's life insurance, whether it's commodities, gold, silver, whether it's even crypto, right? There were some people that were buying islands in the Caribbean, and other people lost everything in the crypto. What's the difference between those two sets of people? So I would just say that it has to be strategy. It has to fit in to an overall strategy. And we always talk about, there's 5 pillars basically of that framework where you make your money, right? Cash creation. You have to protect it, cash capture. And then we have cash flow creation, which is the third one. Now investing for cash flow, putting it back into cash capture where the whole life policy is. And then we also have cash growth, and then cash control is the 5th one overall. So that's the framework that we use when we actually look at some of the plays that we work up in the game. But it's very important to make that distinction. One more thought that I just want to share before I forget, I think it'd be valuable for your audience, is one of the big lessons that I learned from a late mentor of mine, Mr. Nelson Nash, that wrote the book Becoming Your Own Banker, that really was an aha moment for me. Was he shared that, he said, MC, if you think about it, there's really one big giant pool of water out there on this earth that we're all in, because you have the oceans, and all the oceans are tied together. And then you have rivers, which are connected to the oceans. And then you have underground water. And I know we could go on and on, but the essential thing is they're all connected, right? Like pipes, another Seinfeld reference, George Costanza. Right. So they're all connected, and eventually the earth heats up, there's condensation, clouds form, they become heavy, they break, the water comes down to the earth, and they always end up in this one giant pool of water. So what he was trying to teach me is, he's like, if you think about money, think about how money works and the overall banking system that's out there. You and I go somewhere for a bite, one of us pays. They take the money out of our bank account. It then goes into the merchant account of that restaurant. Then they pay all of their employees. It goes into their bank accounts. Maybe they go shopping somewhere else. I mean, we could go on and on and on, the ripple effect. But the idea is that money leaves the banking system, but it always comes back through one shape, way, or form. So that's the central concept. So if you can position an asset or a vehicle and utilize a tool where you built your own little dam or pool out there, and money flows out of your economy, it invests for cash flow, the cash flow comes back to your little dam, and you keep doing that with your businesses and your investments, all of a sudden, slowly but surely, you're going to start to make serious gains in all areas, because you now have control over the way which your cash flows.
Wow. Okay. So it's kind of like you're creating, with the cash value in your life insurance policy, it's like you're creating a more powerful savings account that is the body of your money. It's like the big body of water for your family, for your ecosphere, right?
Yep.
Spending money and all that, just make sure that it pools back here, because again, it's protected and it grows. It's constantly growing. It's growing in a safe manner, and it's protected by the eyes of the people you don't want to see it, right? So you have this beautiful body of water, this body of money, and you just got to make sure that you're constantly refilling it,
right?
Because it's the best place to put your money,
right?
It's the best place to put your money in terms of a lot of things. Now, you were saying that the strategy, it's clarity, control, collateralization.
And there's two more. So the one is congruent, and congruency is the fourth one. And that's just aligning with your principles and values and your investor DNA, which the self-awareness too of very wealthy people is incredible. And that's something also that doesn't cost you anything, to sit down and try to actually learn something about yourself. And there's certain things that you can do. There's a Colby test, which is great, which shows you how you take action. We all have a different relationship to money. We all have different risk profiles and so forth. Your investor DNA kind of puts all that together. We all know something about something, right? There's certain things that we're passionate about, that we know more about. That we just love to consume. We'll read up on a certain specific niche more than another niche. That's also more your investor DNA. So why is that important? Well, it's important that you do things which are aligned with your principles and values. Comes back to the family constitution, which they have. So, for example, if you are, well, let's just pick something here. If you're concerned about the environment, for example, you're not going to support and invest in certain companies that's harming the environment, right? So because that's not congruent of who you are, what you stand for, and your principles and your values. So that's very, very important. And the investor DNA, there's so many examples where folks stuck with what they know, what they were passionate about, and what's one sort of niche where they know more than a lot of people about, right? That could be a source of potentially starting a business or potentially investing in, because if you know a lot about a specific niche, you probably know about all the problems that's within that niche, right? And problems are simply business opportunities if you can come up with solutions. And then the fifth one was cash flow. So we talked a lot about cash flow, but it's also about cash flow recovery, right? By positioning capital more efficiently and effectively, you can recover a lot of cash flow. I'll give an example. When you have, let's just say you have your own bank, which you've established with an overfunded whole life insurance contract, and you've put away, as we advise most people, but minimum of 6 months living expenses. But let's just say you have even 12, which we would highly recommend now, between your business and your family life. Let's just say that is reserves that you have in place in your bank. Well, what does that allow you to do? Well, that allows you to do many other different things within your overall strategy in your economy to recover cash flow. I'll share some examples with you. So let's just say you have 6 to 12 months of expenses that's liquid, that you know that you have access to. You can raise deductibles, for example, on other insurances. So property and casualty, for example, because the goal of insurance should be to insure you from a catastrophic loss, right? You're not going to get a fender bender and then send that in for a claim, because that's only going to put your prices up even more with your car insurance, right? So there's certain things that you can tweak in other areas then that frees up hundreds and thousands of dollars over the course of the year, because you have positioned capital efficiently. You know, there's a lot of medical professionals in our community, and they pay very large disability insurance bills, for example, right? So you can raise an elimination period with those reserves in place, and there's a significant savings to that for them in the course of 6 to 12 months. So those are just examples. I mean, there's many other ways that you can recover cash flow, you know, debt, basically restructuring debt, right? That's a big one. And there's many little tweaks that you can do here and there, but those are just some examples. But cash flow recovery is huge, and you can do that when you position things accordingly that allow you to do that. It makes a huge difference. So those are the five. So clarity, control, collateralization, congruency, and cash flow.
Those are powerful. Yeah, I love that you went into the weeds of it all. And I think you went so deep that you're going to lose 90% of the people, which is fantastic. And this is why I say this is fantastic. Because if you didn't understand some of the things that MC was saying, then that means that there's a gap in your financial literacy that you get to learn about. So like he said, elimination period. Most people have no idea what elimination period is, but what that is the time frame in which you have to wait before you can get your money from an insurance claim. So it's kind of like a deductible, but it's a time deductible. So some insurance policies have a time deductible where you have to wait, like disability insurance. If you get hurt, sometimes they say, well, we have to wait 2 months or 6 months or whatever it is before we pay you. So if they're going to wait, if there's this elimination period, this time deductible, how do you survive in that time frame? Well, you have your own cash bank here. You have your cash value bank, which can fund your life in that time. So he went deep into a lot of things. And if you watch this interview 4 times, 5 times, you will pick up a new thing. It's just that right now it's so jam-packed full of information. You go, I got nothing out of that. But it's only because it's still being absorbed, right? So let's see. We have some comments here. Bill McCaffrey, great stuff. Thanks, guys. It's all about cash flow, leverage, assets, self-directed IRAs, and life insurance, including cash value policies. Absolutely. Let's see. We have our good friend Eric. You're killing it, brother. And so is MC. Thank you. You got Rich. He says, I like that family constitution. I think that is a big one. And if people just take that one little bit, and if you don't want to get overwhelmed with what to do, maybe create that. Just like that's the first step. Family constitution. What's your family all about? What do you guys talk about? How do you guys handle the idea of money? Things like that. Steve was saying, wow, all of the stuff that you were talking about is just, wow. Kyle was saying that, and no one has to know that you pulled out the money, because when you're taking the loan from your bank, it's your private loan from your private vault of sorts, right?
Yeah.
So
no, it's a private contract.
Yeah. Now, the thing that gets people sometimes is because they hear this life insurance policy, and then maybe for the first time ever, they're hearing that, okay, there is the death benefit, but then there's the life benefits, right? It's the
Yes.
cash value. It's borrowing against it. It's creating a bank for yourself. It's reducing how much you spend on insurance because you can raise your deductibles and you can raise your time deductible. So if you can raise those things, your monthly payment for your insurance is cheaper. So you're recovering your cash flow, right? So that's a strategy. So these are rich strategies. But the rich and poor, the poor and the middle class often take advice from a person that maybe doesn't like life insurance so much. He says, buy term and invest the rest, right? And you often get this advice because they say life insurance isn't worth it. The whole idea of this, like, life insurance is a tool for a strategy. I think one of the most important parts that we're forgetting about is who provided the tool for you. Who's the broker on insurance? Who's designing it for you? So for those first-time listeners who are just first time hearing about this life insurance thing, just know that there are dials that you can tweak, and that maybe the person who's tweaked dials shouldn't be the person you're hiring because they don't know about it. There are people who know how to create a policy for your strategy of getting rich. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. What is this term and invested difference versus what you're talking about? Why should somebody do what you're talking about versus, or should they listen to term and invest the rest?
Yeah, I would. One quick comment on that is I would also say is that one thing that I learned from sports is you had different coaches at different stages in your life, right? And they're all great and unique in their all area. The one's not better than the other one, but if when you're in high school, there's amazing high school coaches in all different sports codes, and they get people ready to go to college, basically, right? And that's what they do. And then there's people in college that they work with you and provide that certain level and quality coaching that gets you to the NFL or the NBA or the NHL and so forth. When it comes to advisors and team players, it's the same thing. So you might be at different stages in your life. So it's very important to understand where you're getting advice from, because I didn't even touch on some of the other stuff, but I hear from other folks that are doing very sophisticated strategies like captive insurance companies, and which we didn't even touch on in this show, but that they get pushback from other advisors because they don't know about it. So term and invest, I mean, that is just again, that's
high school. That's elementary school.
Yes. So I mean, there's a lot of holes with that. You lose a lot of control on the term side. Term can be great in a strategy. By the way, I have a convertible term in my strategy, so it's not either or. It's both, but in a strategy. But if that's the only thing that you have, do know that expires, and then that whole basically the death benefit is gone. You're not insured. And wealthy people always transfer risk to a third party. They never retain that within themselves. And then invest the risk. Well, now you're just putting it back in the casino and you lost control, right? Which would definitely cloud your clarity, the first two C's in the strategy cornerstones. So you would lose all control again, because now you're at the mercy of the markets. So, how did the invest in term and or buy term and invest the rest work out over time? Well, the term falls away, and the invest the rest. Now you're back at the mercy of the markets.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because people think that they're going to do this great thing, and they're going to buy term, and then they're going to make $1 million in the casino, like you called it, right? Which is exactly what it is. You don't have the control. You put it into the stock market, it does what it does, and you don't have control. Now you can buy term and invest the rest, and you can buy real estate, and that's fantastic. I love that strategy, right? Because we're real estate guys, so we like that. But again, with term, that's going to end, and again, that's just a death benefit part. And if that's just a tool that you have, it doesn't necessarily, may not fit into your overall picture. But
right.
The problem might be is that you guys might not have created that overall picture. You lack the clarity with the plan that you're trying to put into place. A little background about me, guys, is that I didn't have any interest in insurance at all until I started going down the rabbit hole, and I started learning that rich people use this as a tool to achieve their financial strategy, right? There's overarching financial strategy. They use it in a big way. So then when I started to learn about it, I said, wow, I help people already with their financial strategy. This tool is what they need to take it to another level. So then I met MC, we got to talking, and I said, I need to be a part of whatever you're building. I need to be in on that. And it was a good match. So I love that we're able to create these policies to help people become wealthier in ways that they never even imagined. So yeah, this is amazing, amazing stuff.
Yeah, I never thought it would be stress test during a, the situation that we're in right now, but
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
There's a pandemic, and we created strategies that supposedly protect us and all of that kind of stuff. Guess what? You got stress tested. What have you seen based on your portfolio, other people's portfolios? What have you experienced now that it has actually real life stress tested?
Yeah, it didn't like the whole life insurance has been the one thing that is certain in an overall strategy, because there's a lot of things at the mercy of, there's supply and demand, there's markets that are moving, in different areas. And obviously we're experiencing what we're experiencing right now with businesses and which affects, people renting from you in properties and so forth. But during this time, it's been kind of crazy to see how this is performed. It just did what it was supposed to do, right? It provides certainty. It provided a solid financial foundation. Here's a funny thing, that even during when the crisis first started, I applied for a policy loan and I got that within 4 days during all of this. So I still could access my money. So for me, just experiencing that personally, and I know a lot of other folks that are working with us, commented the same thing. I got emails saying, this is kind of crazy. We were kind of nervous and didn't know how this was going to play out. And I said, that's why, these companies have been around since the mid 1800s, and they survived crashes and Great Depressions, recessions, and now also apparently, they do fairly well in pandemics. So I think like the big takeaway too for listeners should be, is it Mike Tyson that said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So maybe you had a financial plan and then you got punched in the face, and that fell basically out the door for a lot of folks. But if you have a strategy, then it doesn't really matter what's happening in the markets, in the economy, because yes, the tactics will change a little bit and you can pivot and move into different directions. But the overall strategy of what you're trying to do to go from here to there stays the same. There's just going to be slight adjustments on the way. But if you have a strategy that works in all markets and positions you in all markets, that's the power thing. Because as Iron Mike said, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, right?
And everybody got punched by a pandemic right in the face.
Cold clock.
And that really,
sideswipe.
Yeah, and that really tested, right? That tested because I have conversations with people. Their financial plan is to work, right? That's it. That's their plan, work. Well, right. The pandemic punched your job right out of here, right? So you may not have a job right now. Also, people are like, oh, well, I have a 401k. The pandemic punched your 401k. The pandemic punched some of us real estate investors. The pandemic punched all kinds of businesses. It punched everybody.
Yep.
Your cash value in your life insurance policy didn't actually get punched. Like it's what it was. It didn't lose value. You can still access it. It might even still be growing. All of that. It's amazing. So those who are like, man, that's not a good investment. It's not necessarily an investment. It's a tool building your wealth. It's just one tool in your tool belt.
Right.
So I don't want people getting confused with what it is and all of that kind of stuff. So no, it's very powerful. Let's see. Oh, look, we have a comment. Hone, you have to have MC back again. Powerful insights. Absolutely. Carla says it's not one size fits all. Definitely not. So you definitely have to have the right person tweaking the dial. Kyle saying buying term and investing the rest makes the company more money because they want you to invest the rest in the market through their brokerage firm. So they want to double dip on your money. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot that we were trying to unpack here. There's so much information. We can go on and on and on forever and ever and ever. But
Absolutely.
let's see. You have the podcast that is over 180 countries, and that podcast is Cashflow Ninja, right? So it's
Yep.
cashflowninja.com.
Perfect. Cashflowninja.com.
Yeah, and how could people reach out to you? How can people find out more? All of that good stuff.
Yeah, cashflowninja.com. All of the links are there to our social media channels, our shows. We've got some resources there for people to get started. And we're busy creating more resources because we now realize too, through all of this, and we could see through social media, through conversations that I'm having, through people reaching out to us, what is it that we can provide more to help folks, and where was some of the shortcomings? So, like, for example, here was a great feedback that I got actually from someone that is in our meetup group, which we also have up in Newtown, Pennsylvania, Bucks County. Might be virtual for a while, but here was a great insight too, was something that their business contingency plan was great, but not necessarily their family. And I'm like, really? He's like, the contingency plan, if something should happen, passwords, this, that, the organization, which I found very, very insightful, because I think that is a great resource that we can provide to. Here's some of the things that you have to have in place, just as you would, not that with in all the other different areas, right? So, so we have everything there, cashflowninja.com, and all of the different shows are there.
Okay, let's see. We have a generic question where it says, so whole life insurance is better? Again, it's a tool, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, MC. It's a tool. Whole life insurance policy is a powerful tool if used correctly and created by the right broker. Now, it's okay to have term or a convertible term policy because, again, that could be part of the overall arching strategy. So you have to have that first. You have to sit with somebody who can create a strategy for you, and then we can pick which products, which tools that you should get involved with. Is that, would you say that that's accurate?
Absolutely. And someone just made a great comment about it, one size doesn't fit all. That's so true, because it's very customizable and everyone's got different goals, and there's different strategies for people in different parts of their life. So for example, you might have people just starting out that's young, right, in their early 20s and just started working. There's different strategies for them than, say, for someone that's in their late 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then there's different strategies for someone in their late 50s, 60s, and 70s. There's different things that you can do. Someone mentioned the children's policies too. So powerful too. And that's also a strategy, by the way, for grandparents, right? And for, besides parents, obviously, but also for grandparents. Like I said, my mentor, Mr. Nelson Nash, he had a lot of policies on all of his grandchildren. So, and it was gifts for them that he gave over and gave to the parents to give to the children before he passed away. So, yeah, there's many different strategies. It's not one size fits all. And when you're doing higher level planning, there's no cookie cutter stuff. So that's another thing, very wealthy investors and these families don't sit with an advisor that says, well, okay, you kind of fit into this and hands you like a cookie cutter vehicle. It's like, no, somebody needs to understand your goals. What's your vision for your life? What are you looking to accomplish with this? What stage are you at? What resources you have? The whole picture needs to be in play here so that they can design it for you. It isn't just a cookie cutter product or vehicle that's handed over. And if it's sold like that, then it's probably not going to be the right vehicle or tool for you.
Right. And where I want the viewers who are watching the recording or watching this live to be aware of is that there are a lot of insurance brokers out there, insurance providers. And some of these people, they didn't choose to be life insurance brokers, right? They were looking for an opportunity to make money. It was a company that said, come on in, come learn how to make money with life insurance. So then you'll have these people who will say like, oh, you need life insurance? I can provide that to you, right? Those people may or may not, because I don't know who that particular person is, They may not be able to design the policy the way we're talking. There are levels to this, like MC was saying. If your coach for Little League is not the same coach as high school, it's not the same coach as college, it's not the same coach as the professional, right? There are different coaches at different levels. Some of these kind of insurance brokers who just entered the market, they're just looking to make a paycheck. They're not looking to optimize your financial life. They're not, and it's not that they don't want to, they just don't know how to. They're not trained. They didn't proactively choose, I want to be in life insurance. Like MC and I both actively said, wow, this is super powerful. I need to get more involved and I want to learn every detail about it. You learn a lot about a person based on their YouTube history. If you are watching life insurance videos on your spare time for fun, then that's the person you want to work with. So MC and I probably, I know I do, watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos, and just for fun, I've researched more and more and more all about what people are doing with life insurance, how to better themselves, how to better their clients, financial wealth and strategies and all of that through this vehicle. So just be very careful with who you work with, because there are a lot of people who are just, I like to call them product pushers. They're just looking to just sell you a policy, and they might say, look, oh, you want a whole life policy? I have that, right? And they show you their thing. They might design it in a way where their commission is highest, and you don't want that. You don't want necessarily a person who's just selling you something because they get a high commission. You want someone who understands what you're trying to do and then will build you a policy based on that strategy. And like MC was saying, you might be 20 or 30 or 50 or 75, and that policy that you buy is completely different. And I heard you mention that there's a grandpa who buys life insurance for his grandkids. For those who often get confused, life insurance isn't about the death benefit. Grandpa is not looking at the grandkids like, oh, I'm buying these in case you guys die. Right. It's the life part, okay? It's the brainwashing. We've been brainwashed to think life insurance is all about the death. There's the life component to it. He's buying this for the cash value for the children in the future. Like it's almost like buying a CD for the kid, and then the kid can take part of that CD later. But instead of a CD, it's a cash value life insurance policy for the grandkids. So it's not that he's banking on the death of the grandkids. It's the life benefit of the life insurance policy that grandpa's buying for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a great point too, because it's funny. I get emails sometimes because somebody listens to me explaining this, and the email usually goes as follows: MC, that didn't work. Whatever you shared is not correct, because my brother-in-law is in insurance, and I went to him and he set up a whole life policy for me, and it doesn't do anything what you said it was going to do. And then my response always would be, it's usually the three things. It was set up with the wrong company, with the wrong agent, and not structured for max cash, and structured a very, very specific way. Because yes, to your point, it has to have all those three things. And there's a handful of folks that can set them up properly. And there's a massive difference, again, between how it's structured and also the big picture of the value that the person's bringing to the table. So not everyone could set this up, because it's funny. I get the email, I see it, and I'm like, all right, I know where this is going to go. You might as well send me the policy, and I'll look at it, and I will send you one back, which you would have gotten with us, and I'll show you what it would look like. And it's two different worlds. So yes, it is the team players that are around you. It's a different strategy, and it's very, very customizable. I would just say that, just do your research and be cognizant that this is one tool that fits into your toolbox to help you accomplish what you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, that I get those messages all the time too. It's just like, hey, I talked to this insurance agent, and yeah, it doesn't sound like anything that you taught me about. So it's very, very specific who you're getting this information from. So I guess it's a good time to wrap it up, because We've been here for a while, but people want to see you back. They what you have to say, and I would love to have you back, MC.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. This is, as always, a lot of fun. Enjoy our conversations.
Yep. So thank you all for watching. This is MC. This is Hone, and we're on the Hone Zone. Catch you guys later.